6:15 here on TSN Radio. Welcome back to Game Points. No Matthew Ross, as yours truly filling in for Matt Ross. We do have a negotiation standoff with Dave Simon and I with Matt Ross for next Sunday's softball game, which I guess we're looking for some...
It sounds like we're just both out of the game.
I think we're trying to play it out as we are out of it, but we'll listen to his demands.
What are his demands? His demands are that we play. We're not listening to his demands.
I know. Before we get to Duane Ford, let's welcome in our guest here, who can probably kick a ball from here to Calgary if he wishes, Rene Paredes. Rene, how you been, man?
Hi, how you doing, Mo?
I am good. Don't be nervous now, eh? This is this is radio, man. It's like as if you and I are just talking to each other.
I know you for a while now, so it's okay.
You're pro in your forte, which is kicking, and I'm a pro with the mic.
Right.
So
I'll let you do the talking and the questions. I'll just answer.
Don't be shy with our next guest here. By the way, how many jerseys do you see in the stands of your number 30?
Not many.
Aside from family members.
In Calgary?
Yeah, in Calgary or on the road.
I haven't seen any. I've probably seen one or two.
Let's ask our next guest how many Duane Ford jerseys he's seen in his career. Duane, how many uniforms did you see in stands of fans wearing your number during your CFL career?
I remember one guy, and he was drunk at every game.
It's not Rene or I that was wearing the Duane Ford jersey.
No, I wasn't wearing that.
It wasn't. But I seriously, honestly, there might have been a couple because they would sell the game warm stamps jerseys, and every now and then somebody might get stuck with mine because all the others were gone. You know, the Alan Pitts and Jeff Garcia's, Dave Dickinson's, those ones sold quickly, whereas mine was probably a little bit more reasonably priced. So the drunk guy ended up with it. I met the guy. He kept telling me he wanted me to sign it, and I'm sure I eventually did.
That might be on eBay though.
It probably is by now. Or he sold it for booze money.
Yes, exactly. It is what it is sometimes. Duane, how you been?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How are things in lovely Montreal?
It's wet.
If you're not an Alouette.
Well, it's wet. It's rainy out here. But we have to bring in a winner like Rene.
How you doing, Duane?
How are things, Rene? Congratulations, my friend.
Appreciate it. Long time.
Yes. It takes a little bit of work, huh?
Yeah. Pretty happy with it.
Very well deserved.
Appreciate it.
Duane, you did make the correlation that Rene could theoretically play for TFC on air during the broadcast.
Yes.
Did you?
Yes, we're well aware of his versatility. He's no one-trick pony.
Well, I think he could help TFC, though. I mean, aside from them winning yesterday by fluke in the death of the match, he could have easily scored.
Mo, I think you could help TFC.
I think I could. With my long reach, I can play goalkeeper for them.
I really don't think he can't.
Duane, let's go locally first. Alouettes, concerned about their offense at all?
Yes, definitely. I think there have been certainly signs over the last 3 games of improvement, that things are slowly starting to come along. I think the big challenge for the Montreal Alouettes, the easy solution to me for these guys would have been coming into the season, they had 11 of 12 offensive starters returning. And that's a group of those 11 guys that have been together for a few years. The one new guy was Arlen Bruce, who's been around the league. He's a veteran. He's a professional. That, Arlen was a guy who's going to be able to adapt to whatever you decided to do. I think that philosophically, regardless of the sport, I think the role of the coach and coaching staff is to put the players in a position to succeed. Now, in order to do that, you need to have some familiarity with the strengths and weaknesses and the comfort zones of your players. With a new coaching staff, that's something that's taken time to develop in Montreal and is an ongoing process and probably will continue to be. We saw the same thing a little bit when Mark Trestman first got there, that although there were certain things that the Alouettes did very, very well right from day one under Trestman and Scott Milanovic as offensive coordinator, it's not like they tore the league apart right away in the opening month of the season. So I think that that's something that people have to bear in mind. But right now, while you've got a coaching staff that's still getting familiar with its personnel and how to put those people in positions to succeed, I thought that in the early going that they might have wanted to lean a little bit more on some of the old material and rely on Anthony Calvillo and some of the veterans a little bit to maybe tell them what their comfort zone is and what the things are that they do well, rather than trial and error.
Duane, obviously with the bye week here for the Alouettes, what do you think the staff needs to do? As you mentioned before, maybe incorporate Calvillo or maybe some of the veterans in the offensive philosophies, or should they revert back to the Trestman system where they know the system inside out and how well they excelled for the 5 years that Trestman coached his football team?
Yeah, I would say that they're far enough down the road now, and Anthony Calvillo has suggested as well that, he wants to run Mike Miller's system. If Mike Miller's the guy calling the plays and doing the teaching, then it's probably best if they run that system. And I can appreciate that. I think if there was a time to lean on the Trestman material, it would have been more so coming out of the gate. But now they've invested time and energy and a lot of learning on both sides into how to successfully run Mike Miller's system. I think at this point they've got to continue with that. If anything, over the course of these couple weeks between games, I would imagine that the Alouette coaching staff is going to be spending a lot of time looking at film. And while they've actually got a little bit of time that they can sit back and get a little bit of perspective from it and kind of determine now, as I said, okay, what do these guys do well based on our system? What do they do not so well? And, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think looking at some of the some past game film as well, becoming more familiar with that to help make that determination on what sorts of things they need to be running.
We're in conversation with Duane Ford of the CFL and TSN here on TSN Radio Montreal. George Cortez, is he the real MOP for the Saskatchewan Roughriders?
Yeah, he's. I truly believe he is. I'm obviously something of a George Cortez disciple. I won a couple of Grey Cup rings in Calgary with George first as our offensive line coach, later as our offensive coordinator. That was George's first gig as an OC in the CFL, was 1998. And, I saw the effect that he had for 3 years as our offensive coordinator and obviously a very good offensive team at that point in time. I think the biggest thing that George brings to the table is an ability to get the most out of his quarterbacks. And when you look historically at the quarterbacks he's had, within the CFL as an offensive coordinator, Jeff Garcia became a Grey Cup champion, moved on to the NFL. Dave Dickinson under Cortez in Calgary became the league's most outstanding player and moved on to the NFL. Henry Burris was the backup quarterback in Calgary under George Cortez before moving on to the National Football League. George went from Calgary to the NCAA ranks with University of California. The quarterbacks he had there were Kyle Bowler, a guy who didn't have a lot of NFL success, but turned into a first-round draft choice under George Cortez. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has had a great NFL career, another first-round pick. But it's guys like Bowler and in the CFL, Marcus Crandall, another one before George moved to Cal, won a Grey Cup, and Marcus Crandall was a Grey Cup MVP with George as the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. Again, a guy who hasn't had a ton of success outside of being coached by George Cortez. And so I think when you look at what Darian Durant has done so far, when you look at what the offense as a whole has done so far, I think it's more than coincidence that George Cortez is in Saskatchewan and is a part of their success.
Corey Sheets, can he hit that magical 2,500 yards rushing this year at the clip he's going at? I'm unconvinced. It's Corey Sheets has been phenomenal so far. His production has been great. Certainly a lot of that has to do with the overall success of the team offensively and defensively, that Corey Sheets is getting a lot of touches. You have to believe that at some point over the course of the season, teams are going to start to do some things a little bit to figure him out a little bit. There are going to be some bumps in the road. The way he's looked so far, it's tough to bet against him, but for me, it's just too early to say that he's going to put up those kind of numbers over the course of 18 games. Edmonton, obviously, saw them firsthand in Montreal on Thursday, and it seemed like they did a Dan Hawkins themselves, out-coaching themselves when they should have won that football game. You think, even with the extension in hand, that head coach Kavis Reed could be in the hot seat with that 1-4 start?
I'm not necessarily convinced of the hot seat, per se, in terms of his job being in jeopardy. And obviously, it's a situation where if the team fell far below expectations, if suppose they were to finish the season 1-17, which is difficult to imagine in this league, then yeah, I think obviously Kavis's job would be in a lot of trouble. If they're a 6-12 team at the end of the year, I don't think he necessarily is. I think as long as you see progress in this team over the course of the year, starting to develop some consistency in terms of the personnel and being happy with the guys they've got. I think that's a little bit of the mission this year for the Edmonton Eskimos. You look around the rest of the CFL's West Division, you've probably got what many people would consider the top three contenders for the Grey Cup in Saskatchewan, BC, and Calgary. And it's a very tough division to play in right now. So it's going to be a huge challenge for a team that, by their own admission, is in something of a rebuilding mode this season as a new regime takes over there with Ed Hervey as the general manager. And so you've got to give them some time. One of the things that they're big on is consistency and not sort of changing gears, constantly changing the message and so on. And I think a significant part of that is having a consistent voice in Kavis Reed leading that coaching staff and that football team.
We're in conversation with Duane Ford here on TSN Radio. Ottawa expansion draft, not too far away when you think about it. You look at the quarterbacks. Renee knows one very well, Bo Levi Mitchell, Drew Willie last night with the Rough Riders. Zach Claros could potentially shine on Tuesday against BC at the Skydome here. What do you think is the lead horse right now for Marcel Desjardins to look at as being that guy that they want to build upon for next year's expansion year?
Well, I'll tell you what's fascinating as you watch these guys, and Calgary is a great example. Every team in this expansion draft is allowed to protect one quarterback. And the expansion draft takes place before free agency opens, so guys who will become free agents in February would still have to be protected or be eligible to be drafted in December, and then Ottawa would have exclusive rights to those guys. But realistically, if you're Ottawa, you're not going to draft a guy who potentially is going to become free in a couple of months unless you're strongly convinced that he wants to be in Ottawa. So I look at Calgary, and much of the talk has to do with Bo Levi Mitchell. I think it's an absolute no-brainer for Calgary that Bo Levi Mitchell's the guy you protect, because no team can lose more than one quarterback. So I think you leave it to Ottawa to decide whether they're going to take, or if they're going to take, a Kevin Glenn or a Drew Tate to be their starter right now, and then maybe pick a young up-and-coming guy, whether it's a Zach Collaros or Trevor Harris from Toronto, or you mentioned Drew Willie in Saskatchewan with the belief that obviously they'd likely protect Darian Durant. Very difficult to say at this point, but certainly if you're Calgary, I think Bo Levi Mitchell is the guy that you have to protect because of his age and his potential and the depth that you have. You've got two veteran guys. Bo Levi will be in his third year by next year. You don't necessarily need two veteran guys ahead of him. You only need one, and that one, quite frankly, may be backing him up by then based on what we saw the other night. Finally,
Duane, if you or Renee walked down the streets of Calgary, who would we recognize, you or Renee?
You know what? I'm going to say me. And, Renee deserves to be recognized far more. But the difference is that Renee does his job with a helmet and face mask on, whereas I don't anymore, as much as I probably should. So I'm going to say that I would, simply because of what our work uniforms are.
Renee, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I agree with you. I'm just a kicker, man.
No, it has nothing to do with being a kicker. In all honesty, Renee could be the starting quarterback, but because most of the time people see him, he's got that helmet and face mask on that I say the same about so many players. It's maybe someday somebody needs to develop a transparent football face mask, because I think it might help the marketability of Canadian Football League players if fans could see their faces the way they can with hockey players or baseball players.
Or maybe Renee could go with the classic one-bar look on his helmet.
Yeah, flashback.
Exactly. Duane, what do you have lined up for the CFL and TSN? When's your next broadcast, whether it's the week completing this week or next week?
Well, I start off with the traditional Tuesday night football
broadcast
from Rogers Centre in Toronto. So we will get a look at Zach Collaros in that one, as Scott Milanovic announced today that he will start. Ricky Ray's